All right guys, the warm-up that you're going to see me take Margaret through, or not really take her through, it's the warm-up that all the lifters that I work with out here do, the ones that I specifically work with, which is a smaller group. The warm-up's the same for every training day, regardless if it's upper body, lower body, max effort, or dynamic effort. There's multiple functions as to why I selected the exercises that I have. The first is experience. This is just what I've seen work over my entire career better than anything else. The second is I want to warm the muscles up, or at least kind of get them prepared for what they're going to have to do for the training for that day. But there's an explanation, there's a asterisk with that. And then the third is I also want to get them loosened up. So there's a difference between being warmed up and being loosened up. If somebody is too tight, and tight is a relative term, so a lot of these terms are relative, so they have very little meaning without actual context. But for most powerlifters that I've seen, their hips are always too tight when they come in. So I like to have exercises in there that are going to open their hips up. They're also notoriously weak throughout the abdominal region. They like to skip their ab work. They like to skip the little things. So I put a lot of these things as part of the warm-up routine that they do. So it's multiple facet. It's all light. All the exercises are done light with very moderate weight, so way under 50% weight. I don't want anything close to failure. Nothing should go even close to 5-6 reps shy of failure. They're going to do it as a circuit, and they're going to do as many reps as they really want. I don't care how many it is. It can be 5, it can be 6, it can be 10. I really don't give a shit. They can do as many circuits as they want. The end goal is they have to be ready to do. Today is a dynamic squat day, so they need to be able to go over and be able to start their first set of dynamic squats. So it's a very fast circuit. It'll be done a little bit slower today because I'm talking, her way through it. Typically they're done with the warm-up within 5 to 6 minutes, depending upon the day. If it's snowing outside and it's cold, it may be 3 or 4 different rotations. Lily told me today she went through one time, she felt fine, and that's all it really required. I don't care how many times they go through. When it comes to the warming up, what I care about most is how many warm-up sets they do with the first exercise of the day. So today they're squatting, so they may use the bar 8 or 10 times, 8 or 10 sets before they even begin to put weight on it. To me, that's where the warm-up really fucking matters, is with that, because that's specific to the actual exercise they're doing. I don't want them to get into the main exercise and make big jumps and then end up getting fucked up from that. At the same time, I don't want to have such an extensive warm-up routine or ritual and all this other bullshit that it can't be duplicated in a meet setting, or it can't be skipped altogether. I want them to be in a good enough condition that if I wanted to, I could come in when they walk through the door and said, you know what guys, don't warm up today, just start with the squat. And then they could do the multiple sets with just the bar, work up and have the same type of training session that they would have if they went through and did the warm-up routine 3 or 4 times. That's when I talked about the experience of the warm-up routine. That's where I think the greatest importance comes in, is they have to be able to use it when they need it, but if a situation occurs where they're not able to do it, to still be able to get high quality training in without it. The first warm-up exercise is hanging leg raise, bent knee hanging leg raise. The reason for this is to warm up the hip flexors, to decompress the spine is the other thing that I'm looking for there, is in the bottom position, just to elongate the spine, to stretch it out, and also to warm up the abs. So this isn't anything that's being done to failure by any means. It's just to warm up the hip flexors, to warm up the hips, to get the abs activated, firing, whatever you want to call it, and then going from there. So it's more about decompressing the spine and opening the hips up. Go on to the next. And then all the warm-up movements are done in a circuit. The second exercise, again, is going to be to open up the hips, which is the pull-down abs, which step forward a little bit as you know you're supposed to. So it's in a straight body position here, which is to open the hips up, to stretch the hip flexors, to stretch the abs, but also to activate the abs and actually to begin to start rooting the feet a little bit, because to do this in the right position where you're standing away from the cable, your feet have to be locked into the floor, otherwise you're going to fall backwards. So it's kind of teaching them how to grab into the floor without actually having to use any type of verbal commands at all. This third is the face pull, which is just your normal face pull. You can never do too many face pulls, and you can never work your lats too much. So even though this is a lower body day, the warm-up is essentially the same for the lower body and the upper body, in that it's including, you know, movements that are typically weak points of lifters or points of injury potential, and also for its intended purpose to warm them up for the actual training. It's just your normal low row. This is just volume for the lats. This one isn't particularly something that has to be done on the lower body day. The face pulls, I would say, should be done all the time. This is just to put more volume of the lat training into the program. Again, none of these things are being done heavy. That's all being done as a warm-up. And then after that, she's gonna go into pull downs. Doesn't matter what bar. Usually they'll go with whatever bar's hanging on there. Again, with this, I want distraction of the shoulder, you know, so the stretch of the lats. So a lot of this, with these exercises, don't think that all these exercises are about contraction. All these exercises that are selected here for the warm-up are about the lengthening and the stretching and the loaded stretching and opening the joints up, you know, to get them ready to be able to squat, or today's dynamic squat training. So to be able to squat. This is inverse leg curl or glute ham raise. I give them a choice between the two. Again, it's to stretch the hamstrings out. It's not so much about working the hamstrings, but to stretch the hamstrings out to get them ready to be able to squat. On the other days, is to be able to create workload and volume. Some days it may be the inverse leg curl, some days the glute ham raise. Some people get stuck on just the glute ham raise. Essentially, they're kind of doing the same things. If I had a preference, it would be the glute ham raise because it's harder. You know, given their preference, it's always the inverse leg curl because it's a warm-up. This exercise is just a bent knee up. We go straight up higher, here, up. And then to just keep the knee bent down and then up, the heels together. Bent knee leg raise, more for the glutes and the lower back to be able to get warmed up and activated for the squat. Then after this rotation, depending upon how they feel, they may do 1 to 3 rotations. The reps I kind of leave up to them, as I said earlier, and then from here they'll go on to whatever their first exercise is for the day and do as many warm-up sets as required to be able to work up from there.